Welcome to episode number 14 of Bible Blessings. Joseph has been forgotten for another 2 years, on top of the time that he'd already spent in prison. But God had a plan, and He always does. The Bible says in Jeremiah 29 verse 11, "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." God had a reason. He had not forgotten. So continuing from the last time, Genesis 41 and verse 1, the Bible says, "Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream." Now God gives Pharaoh a dream. He dreams of 7 fat cows, and then 7 thin cows come up and eat the 7 fat cows. He wakes up because of it, but then goes back to sleep. And he dreams of 7 ears of corn, fat and plump. And then 7 thin ears of corn come up and eat the 7 fat ears of corn. Then in the morning when he wakes up, he's troubled because of this dream. So he calls all the wise men of his kingdom, but none can tell what the meaning of the dream is. And guess who is standing by seeing this whole encounter? The butler, of course. Genesis 41, verse 9. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "I remember my faults this day, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. We each had a dream one night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. Each man he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came to pass, just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hanged him." He remembers Joseph. And so Joseph is pulled out of prison in haste, given a shave, changes his clothing, and is placed before Pharaoh, who asks for help with his dream. What a whirlwind of events. Joseph must be shocked, but he's composed. And as the king asks for help, Joseph is careful in his reply. Genesis 41, verse 16. "It is not me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." He is careful to give glory back to God and not for himself. And so Pharaoh launches into his dream, and at the end of it, Joseph, without hesitation, begins to interpret it. Genesis 41, verse 25. "Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do." Joseph tells him that there will be 7 good years of crops and plenty of food, and then it will be followed by 7 bad years of famine, to the extent that the 7 good years would be forgotten. And then Joseph gives his suggestion of a solution, verses 33 to 36. "Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under authority of Pharaoh, and let him keep food in the cities. Then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine." Where do you think Joseph learned all of this management? Well, of course, in Potiphar's house when he was managing it, and in prison when he had everything under his care. It was through these experiences that God was training Joseph for something greater. The advice was so good in Pharaoh's eyes that he declared in Genesis 41:38, "Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God?" And right there and then, he promotes Joseph to the position of prime minister. From the prison to the palace. The Bible says in Genesis 41:46 that Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. That is even a young age for any prime minister. He had been in Egypt maybe about 15 years, 8 years in Potiphar's house, 7 years in prison. It was a while, but nonetheless, 30 years is a young age to be a prime minister. You know, when we read about Joseph's story, Many of us want that overnight rags to riches experience. We want that blessing from God. We want Him to promote us or pour out the abundance of riches and blessings. But many of us don't have the integrity and faithfulness of Joseph when he was a slave in Potiphar's house and prisoner in the dungeon. Many are not able to endure the life lessons that God allows us to experience. It was through these lessons that God prepared Joseph for his position of power and influence. So let's remember that God has a purpose in every situation that we go through, for better or for worse. Through this, God is molding your character in preparation for something else. Let's endure through it all. Let's cling on to the almighty arm of Jesus. Let's hold on and be faithful today, no matter what. If you were blessed by the message today, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. It will help to create more content like this and help to spread the blessing. Thank you and God bless.